Weren't such a show-off. People would actually care when your kid lands in the hospital. My sister sneered across the family group chat. Dad reacted with a laughing emoji. Mom stayed silent. The message hovered on my screen like a knife, casual cruelty wrapped in digital noise. Hi everyone, my name is Clara Maddox and I'm 33. The night my son couldn't breathe, I dialed every family number I had saved. No one came. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Have you ever stared at a hospital monitor, praying for a heartbeat louder than the silence in your chest? The hallway reeked of antiseptic and vending machine coffee. The doctor said, "Emergency operation," and I signed papers with shaking hands. I kept expecting footsteps, Dad's deep voice, Mom's perfume, someone saying we're here. Instead, there was only the slow blink of the red surgery in progress light and the echo of my own breathing. At 3 a.m. the vending machine refused my last dollar. I sat on the cold bench outside pediatrics, scrolling through missed calls. None from family. I sent one last message, "He made it. Don't worry." No one replied. 3 days later a text from Dad appeared. "Need $8,000 for your sister's wedding dress." No, how's the boy? No, is he okay? Just money. Always money. I stared at the digits until they blurred. Then I opened my banking app, typed $2 and attached a note. "Buy a veil." My finger hovered before pressing send. The click felt surgical, clean, irreversible. Then I froze their access to every joint account I had ever shared with them. Utilities, mortgage, even the family trust. One tap at a time I severed decades of guilt. That night I tucked my son into bed, his small chest rising steady at last. For the first time I didn't feel powerless. I felt quiet. Dangerous in the kind of way silence can be. The next morning my phone vibrated before sunrise. "Ms. Maddox? This is the bank manager. There's been quite a scene here involving your parents." I smiled into the dim light of dawn. "Tell me everything." The bank manager's voice carried a mix of confusion and concern. "Your father's here with your mother. They're saying you froze their access by mistake." "Mistake?" I echoed. "No, that was intentional." There was a pause. The sound of muffled voices in the background. Then, "Well, they're threatening to call the police." I almost laughed. The same people who hadn't shown up when my child couldn't breathe were now at the bank, fighting for money they didn't earn. I thanked the manager calmly, hung up and stared at the morning light spilling through my blinds, golden, sharp, indifferent. My son, still drowsy from medication, stirred in bed. "Mom, did Grandpa come?" I forced a smile. "No, baby. Grandpa's busy." The word busy felt poisonous. By noon my phone began to buzz nonstop. Family group notifications lighting up one after another. "Mom, why are you doing this?" "Dad, this isn't how family handles problems." "Sister, you're ruining my wedding, Clara." I stared at the messages, feeling something colder than anger. It wasn't hate anymore. It was knowledge. The kind you can't unlearn once you've seen people's priorities. I typed one sentence back. "The same way family handles emergencies, right?" Silence. Not a single reply. That afternoon the bank's lawyer called to confirm that all linked funds were now under my individual control. The manager apologized again for the disturbance. I thanked him, politely, like a woman who had already died in every way that mattered. When I stepped outside, autumn air hit my face, crisp, almost cleansing. Every leaf seemed to whisper something about freedom. That night my sister posted a sob story on Facebook. "When money ruins blood, who wins?" She didn't mention whose child almost didn't make it to see the next sunrise. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't need to. Because revenge, I was learning, didn't always roar. Sometimes, it just quietly waited for the world to watch them unravel. And oh, they were just getting started. The next morning I walked into the bank myself. The marble floor reflected fluorescent light like a stage. Every head turned the moment I entered, because there they were. My parents, arguing at the counter as if the world owed them sympathy. Mom's voice carried across the room. "We built her life from nothing and now she acts like we're strangers." Dad slammed his hand on the desk. "Reverse it right now. That money's ours too." The bank manager looked relieved when he saw me. "Ms. Maddox, thank God. Could we talk privately?" I smiled politely. "No need. Whatever they have to say, they can say it here." The air froze. My parents turned, startled. Dad's face was red, his tie crooked. You humiliated us, he hissed. I just protected what's mine, I said quietly. You had your chance to show up when it mattered. Mom's eyes filled with fake tears. You're heartless. The manager shifted awkwardly. I looked straight at her. No, Mom. I was heartbroken. That's different. Silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Then I placed my hand on the counter and said calmly, I've moved all funds. From now on you'll need to handle your own expenses. Including wedding dresses. Dad's jaw clenched so hard the veins in his neck trembled. You'll regret this. I leaned closer. You already did when you chose money over blood. I walked out before they could speak again. The sound of my heels against the marble echoed like punctuation marks to a lifetime of silence I'd swallowed. Outside the wind was colder, sharper. But it didn't hurt. Felt burned. Back home I brewed coffee and checked on my son. He was coloring quietly, blue sky, red sun, stick figures holding hands. For the first time in months he smiled at me like the world was safe again. I smiled back, though deep inside I knew this was only the beginning. Because when you take power away from people who fed on your kindness for years, they don't disappear. They come back hungry. It started 2 nights later. My sister's fiancé called me out of nowhere, voice trembling, polite but strained. Clara, your parents told me you were having financial issues. They said your son's hospital bills were unpaid. I froze mid-sentence. Excuse me. He hesitated. They said you might try to take money from the wedding fund. For a second I couldn't breathe. I looked around my quiet kitchen. Unpaid bills stacked on the table, the faint hum of the refrigerator, my son's drawing still pinned to the fridge. Everything felt so small compared to the storm they were creating. Thank you for calling, I said finally. But next time verify your stories before you believe them. Then I hung up. By morning whispers had spread. A cousin texted me, heard you're broke? Should have saved instead of playing the hero. The family chat was alive again. Screenshots, half-truths, pity disguised as gossip. I sat in silence for hours, scrolling, rereading, deleting drafts of replies. Then I opened my laptop and logged into something none of them knew existed. My family's financial trust records. Years ago, I'd been appointed the executor when Dad had been too busy. Every transaction, every hidden fund, every favor they'd buried under fake names was there. A plan formed like a slow dawn behind my ribs. No yelling. No chaos. Just truth. That evening I sent an email to the family group. Subject line, transparency. Inside, scanned documents, account summaries, screenshots, timelines. Proof that while they'd been crying poor, they'd used trust funds to finance luxury trips and secret property transfers. Then I added one last line. You lied about my son's hospital bills. Let's see how you explain these to the wedding guests. I hit send. For the first time in years my phone stayed silent. Outside it began to rain, soft, relentless, like the sky itself was tired of pretending. I didn't know what the fallout would look like. But I did know one thing. I had just turned their favorite weapon, shame, back on them. And they weren't ready for that. By dawn the family group chat had imploded. Messages flooded in faster than I could read them. Dad, you've lost your mind, Clara. Mom, how dare you air private matters like this? Sister, do you hate me that much? I didn't answer. I just watched the typing bubbles appear and vanish, panic disguised as pride. My email had reached beyond them. Within hours, distant relatives and even wedding vendors had seen the documents. The guest list had shrunk by half before noon. By evening my sister called. Her voice was sharp and trembling. You think this makes you noble? You're jealous. Jealous. I repeated softly. Of what? Of me. I'm getting married, I have attention and you can't stand it. I almost laughed. You're right, I said. I can't stand how easily you all sell the idea of love while borrowing it on someone else's credit. She cursed, cried, then hung up. For the rest of the day my phone stayed silent, until a new number appeared. Ms. Maddox, a voice said. This is Detective Harris from Financial Crimes. We received an anonymous report about suspicious family fund activity under your name. Your parents have filed a complaint. My breath stilled. I could hear my son's TV in the background, a cartoon theme song echoing through the hall. I see, I said evenly. Then you'll want to check the same documents I just sent to every single one of them. There was a pause. You have records? All verified, I replied. You'll find their signatures too. Silence again, then a soft, understood. We'll be in touch. When I hung up, my hands trembled. Not from fear, but from the realization that I had finally touched the untouchable. They'd always believed I'd stay quiet, sentimental, compliant. Now their lies had legal weight and names attached. That night I tucked my son into bed and whispered, "We're almost free." He smiled sleepily. "Free like the birds?" "Exactly like the birds," I said. Outside, thunder cracked, low and distant. The kind that warns a storm has only just begun. 2 days later, the story hit the local news. Not by name, but the headline was unmistakable. Prominent family accused of misusing child's medical trust. My inbox exploded. Old friends messaged cautiously, pretending to check in. The same people who had ignored me during my son's surgery now suddenly remembered how to type my name. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The detective called again that afternoon. "Ms. Maddox, your records checked out. It appears your parents diverted trust funds into private accounts. We'll need your cooperation moving forward." "Of course," I said. "Just tell me what you need." When I hung up, I realized my hands were steady this time. No shaking. No guilt. Just clarity. That evening, I received a voicemail from Dad. His voice sounded small, something I'd never heard before. "Clara, your mother hasn't stopped crying. Your sister's wedding, it's falling apart. Please undo this before it destroys us." I listened twice, then deleted it. Later that night, I walked into my son's room. He was asleep, one arm around his stuffed bear. The hospital bracelet still sat in the drawer beside him, a quiet reminder of what silence had cost me. I took it out, ran my thumb across the faded print, and whispered to the dark. "They destroyed themselves." The next morning, a lawyer representing the family called. "Your parents want to settle this privately. They're offering to transfer property and funds in exchange for your silence." I smiled faintly. "Tell them I prefer transparency." He sighed. "You know this could ruin them." I leaned back. "Then maybe ruin is overdue." That night I wrote a letter, not to them but to my son. I wanted him to know that silence isn't kindness when it protects cruelty. Then I lit a candle and placed the hospital bracelet beside it. The flame flickered against the window pane, dancing like truth itself, fragile, persistent, unashamed. Outside the rain had stopped. But something else had begun. The quiet part of revenge that doesn't burn. It rebuilds. The following week felt unreal. The wedding venue canceled, claiming reputation risk. My sister went live on social media, crying about family betrayal and lies spread out of jealousy. The comment section turned into a battlefield, half of them defending her, the other half dissecting her sudden luxury lifestyle. I didn't reply. The truth didn't need my voice anymore. It had its own legs now. At work, my phone buzzed constantly. Reporters, extended relatives, even old teachers from my hometown pretending to offer moral support. But under all that noise, there was one message that mattered. Detective Harris. Official charges filed. Misuse of funds confirmed. Investigation moving forward. I sat at my desk for a long time staring at that line. I thought of all the times Dad told me, "You're too emotional for business." He was wrong. My emotions had become my weapon. Sharpened, patient, silent. That evening I visited my parents' house. For once, the gate was open. No guards, no music, no laughter. Just stillness. Mom opened the door, her eyes swollen, face pale. "You came," she whispered. "Yes," I said quietly. "To see the truth in daylight." Dad sat at the table, hands folded, a man suddenly smaller than his voice. "You've humiliated this family, Clara." I looked around, at the untouched wedding decorations piled in the corner, the expensive fabrics draped over chairs, the silence. "No, Dad," I said. "You did that yourself." Mom started to cry, her shoulders trembling. "We were scared. We thought you'd never forgive us for not coming that night." I felt my throat tighten. "You didn't have to come for me," I said softly. "You just had to come for him, your grandson." Silence filled the room, thick as guilt. I placed the hospital bracelet on the table and turned to leave. No yelling. No tears. Just the sound of the door closing behind me. The kind of sound that means a legacy just ended, and something freer just began. A month later, the case was over. The accounts were unfrozen, but this time solely in my name. My parents had signed the property transfer quietly, not because they wanted to, but because exposure had left them with no choice. My sister's wedding never happened. Her fiancé backed out after learning about the financial fraud. It wasn't the ending I planned. It was the one life demanded. That morning I drove my son to his checkup. The same hospital. The same hallway. But this time I didn't feel like the woman who begged for footsteps that never came. I felt like someone who had walked through fire barefoot and found her balance on the other side. As we left the building, my son asked, "Mom, are we poor now?" I smiled. "No, sweetheart. We're rich, just not the kind they understand." We passed a coffee shop near the parking lot. Through the glass I saw my father sitting alone. No suit. No phone. Just a man staring into a cup that had gone cold. For a second our eyes met. A lifetime of unspoken things between us. He didn't wave. Neither did I. Instead I whispered to myself, some debts aren't paid in money. Later that night I logged into the bank app one last time. Not to check balances, but to close every joint account that had ever tied me to them. I paused before confirming the same way I had before sending that first $2. Then I pressed close. A soft click. The sound of endings and of peace. I walked to my son's room. He was asleep, his hand clutching that same stuffed bear. The candle from that night burned gently on my dresser. The last flicker of a story that had finally told itself. I whispered, "We're free now." Outside the night was quiet. No storm, no thunder. Just the slow rhythm of a world finally in balance. Revenge hadn't been about destruction. It was about restoration. About building something unbreakable, quietly from ashes. And for the first time in my life, that felt like justice.